I think the way you look is a lot genetic, okay? So some people say, oh, you're overweight, you're weak, you're just weaker character, why can't you just look like somebody else? I think that's number one, unkind, but number two is totally untrue. So I think the way you are, even your weight, is a lot influenced by your genes.
Welcome back to Spilling the Tea with Halley. I'm Aaron, and today we are talking about something that's close to my heart and even closer to my body. We are talking about body types, effort, and where medical body treatment actually fit in. So are you stuck with the body type that you were born with, or can you realistically change it without going full Christian Bale for a movie role? To help us unpack this, we have Dr. Terence Tan, Medical Director at Halley Medical Aesthetics and Halley Body Slimming Clinic. Dr. Tan.
Hello, everybody. I introduce myself again. I'm Dr. Terence Tan from Halley. We've got two clinics. One is Halley Medical Aesthetics and Halley Body Slimming Clinic. Very happy to see everybody. And it's morning here, so good morning, everybody.
So, Dr. Tan, let's start with what we see on screen.
Okay, on screen, yes.
Yeah, on screen.
Christian Bale, right?
Yeah, Christian Bale.
Understand.
So we all seen movie actors, they completely transform their bodies for roles. Christian Bale taking, for example, one role he's very skinny, very scrawny. Next moment he's Batman, buff, with all the pecs. So does that mean like, for body type it's totally flexible if you just try hard enough?
Yeah, okay. So anyway, Christian Bale is a very famous actor during my time and your time as well. And he's, very famous for his role as Batman, but he has also done other roles. So he has done roles in which he is very buff, like in Batman. And then after that, he became really scrawny and rough looking. And he was able to really fluctuate his weight really well. So how he does it, I guess it sounds simple, but actually behind the scenes is probably not so simple. That's his job, and anybody whose job involves looking in a certain way will put in a lot of effort. And in Hollywood, there's a lot of resources for them to do so. So they probably have their own personal trainer. They probably have their own dietitian, coach. Millions of dollars are involved. So therefore, they are really motivated themselves to change their body shape. And perhaps, in more recent times, there are also other tools that they can help have them change their body weight. There are certain effective medications which should come on board. And even in the past, there were medications which could help. I'm not saying that they used it, but, there are ways in which they can help change their body shape. Now, of course, it's important for them to go to the gym. Important for them to make sure that they look the way they are. They can change their body shape by just, changing what are the exercises that they like to do in the gym. So if they want to look really muscular and buff, they probably want to do more upper body kind of workouts. If they want to look really scrawny, they might exercise their lower limbs a little bit and totally don't touch their upper limbs. So I think there are quite a few ways that these people can change the way they look.
Okay, so we have talked about like body shapes and body type. So when someone says this is just my body, what is actually fixed and what actually can change?
Well, I think it's very simple. You don't really need a doctor to tell you that. Okay, so if you look at it, there is the bone structure, the skeleton. That's something you're born with. Obviously, we are talking about change, right, today. So it's obviously something that you cannot change. So there are different kind of body shapes. There's what you call an ectomorph, a mesomorph, and a mesomorph. Okay, so don't worry too much about it. But in general, for men, how wide are your shoulders? And how wide are your hips, right? So if your hips are a little bit wider and your shoulders a little bit more narrow, then you might want to train your shoulders to make it a little bit broader. So we talk about training. So we have also gone on to the second part of our body, the muscle, right? Muscle is something you can change. If you have you want to look a little bit more masculine, a little bit more muscular, athletic, then obviously you train your shoulders, make it look a little bit broader, your chest, and then you look in a certain way. After that, what you have, obviously, you have the amount of fat that you have on top of the muscle below the skin, and that is also something that perhaps you cannot change. Okay, so a lot of people say, oh, okay, if I eat a bit less, my tummy goes away, and I look different. Well, in a way, yes. I think the amount of fat within your cells can change a little bit, but you don't really change the shape. Okay, so for example, if I look like a pear, If I am a bit heavier, I'm a big pear. If I'm a little bit smaller, I'm just a smaller pear. So it's hard for us to change from a pear to an apple, right? So for that, you need certain forms of treatment that will reduce the amount of fat in a certain area and perhaps leaving fat in other areas or building up bulk in certain other areas through muscle development. Okay, so lastly, of course, there's skin. Skin is not generally on top of the fat, and of course, loose skin over certain areas as you get a little bit older. Let's say if there is a little bit more loose skin just over our tummy area, it kind of makes it look a little bit more bulgy. So the bulginess of our tummy is actually a balance of two forces. Number one is the fat pushing out, and number two, the skin pulling in. So there's always a tug of war between the two. As we get a little bit older, the fat pushing out kind of wins because we do have looser and looser skin as you get older. And in general, because we're a little bit more busy as we get a little bit older, we tend to gain a little bit of weight. And while there's no specific increase in any part of our body, in general, if we gain weight, it will be a little bit more bulgy.
Okay, Dr. Tan. So, I've been, previously I have lost a bit of weight, but I tend to find, after I lose the weight, there will be a bit of the loose skin here and there. And also, there are certain body areas which I find a bit more difficult to lose as compared to maybe like I say the arms and the legs. Yeah. So is there any treatments that is able to assist, like, for example, I heard about cool sculpting. Is it a bit like a shortcut or maybe like a cheating for like losing weight?
Cheating? Of course not. No, life is so difficult. We need all the assistance that we can get. There's no such thing as cheating. Cheating is a very strong word, okay? So don't use that again. So let's talk seriously. Let's talk about what you're talking about. We covered so many different things, right? Fat, body shape, underwear change, skin, all kinds of things, right? So I think let's talk back about what I probably said a little bit earlier. The way you are is, or rather the body shape you have is in a large part genetic, okay? So some people have a little bit more fat here, a little bit less fat there. So you mentioned that the tummy seems to be a little bit more prominent, whereas your arms and legs, in terms of your thighs, might not look that prominent. So that's how you were built. You have more fat cells over your tummy area, or so you say, and less fat cells over other areas. So as you said, also from big pear, small pear, remember the analogy. So you can lose weight or you can gain weight. Yeah, you will look slightly smaller in general, but you probably wouldn't change your shape too much. Okay, so even change your shape, as we become adults, there will be no further change in the number of fat cells that you have in a certain area. So if you were to gain weight, all the fat cells will become a little bit bigger and vice versa. So if you want to change your shape, and say again, then you have to destroy some of that fat cells. And how do you do that? Well, any effective method, then you can, if you want to talk about surgical, there's liposuction, in people who are suitable. But non-invasive methods, yes, then there's, you can destroy the cells through a cooling mechanism, like what you said, cool sculpting. A heating mechanism, comes in various machines, radio frequency being good. And these machines destroy fat cells. And they use the principle that the fat cells are more sensitive to temperature changes, either cold or hot, as compared to other tissues around the area whereby you don't want to destroy or hurt. So you probably can guess, right? There are skin, muscle, nerves, blood vessels. You want them to stay the way they are. And this selective sensitivity to temperature and its destruction at certain temperatures allows scientists, doctors, to invent machines that fix the temperature at a certain level such that it is too stressful for the fat cells, and therefore they would die through a process called apoptosis, whereas the other structures being a little bit more resilient is stable and not hurt at that temperature. So this is called a selective lipolysis. Yeah, and that works well. And because adults do not make new fat cells, I think children do, because when we're children, we tend to be growing taller, and then a lot of things have the potential to multiply, like fat cells, like our bone cells becoming taller. But as we get a little bit older, very few organs or tissues actually have this regenerative potential. So whatever you lose for the long term.
I see. But after we lose the fats, the skin, is still like a issue. So if let's say, I have a loose skin and maybe like a stretch mark and all this, is there any particular treatment that I'm able to maybe to use or to utilize?
Okay, so I think you talked about two different things, right? So you talked about loose skin and stretch marks. They're actually not the same. They're actually pretty different. Let's talk about loose skin first. In general, our skin has got some elasticity, okay? And this elasticity is conferred by various structures within our skin, collagen, and to a greater extent, elastin. So for most people, except if you were to lose a lot of volume over your tummy or other areas, you are unlikely to have what we call an apron, okay? When you look at all these reality shows where people lose plenty of weight, 40, 50% of their body weight, yes, they do have an apron. There's a limit to how much the elasticity can bring in the skin, and they have what you call an apron. But for you and me, if you're just losing a small fraction of our volume over tummy, in general, the skin, especially if you're a little bit younger, will do just fine, taking in the loose volume by contracting. However, if there's a problem either because we are not so young anymore and we have less elastic skin, or we lose a massive amount of volume over the area, then yes, we do want to have certain treatments that will help. I guess the most effective one would be surgical, through what we call a tummy tuck or abdominoplasty, but that is quite a big operation and leaves you a scar and you might not want to do it. And let's say you want something a bit more gentle, then of course, in general, I think doctors would be talking about maybe radio frequency based treatments, or less commonly through ultrasound and even lasers. So there's always, as you said, there's always this tug of war between the fat and the skin. So that's one issue. And you talked a little bit more about stretch. You talked a little bit about stretch marks as well. So stretch marks is actually a little bit different. It's not that much due to loose skin, but actually like permanent damage of the skin through stretching over the years. And this part of the skin actually becomes physically a bit thinner than the rest of the skin. It's a bit like a scar. And because of it being a scar, losing tightening skin, well, it might help a little bit, but not really that much. So a lot of peeling treatments or treatments which are more catered to a scar, like laser peels and stuff, are probably better at stretch marks. But being really honest about it, I think that in terms of the technology we have, especially if you're talking about non-invasive technology, which is what most of us busy people would choose, dealing with fat is probably the easiest, followed by loose skin. Stretch marks tend to be a little bit resistant. But thankfully speaking, the amount of people who are truly very bothered about stretch marks is a bit lower. But yes, we can still do something about it. It just takes a little bit more time and effort.
I see. But of course, all these medical treatment are more like an assistance itself. The overall that helps with losing the fats, I think most likely is the lifestyle changes.
I think the way you look is a lot genetic. Okay, so some people say, "Oh, you're overweight, you're weak. You're just weaker character. Why can't you just look like somebody else?" I think that's number one, unkind, but number two is totally untrue. So I think the way you are, even your weight, is a lot influenced by your genes. Okay, so your body wants to be a certain weight, and that's really a genetic thing. Because long ago, unlike now, whereby we have too much food to eat, we actually have too little food to eat last time. During times of famine, we want to make sure that we have enough weight so that we don't die from starvation. In times of famine, we'll start to lose a little bit of weight through not eating enough, but we have enough fat stores such that we survive this period of famine. But now, of course, it's different, right? and we are generally overweight. But everybody is born with a certain set point. We want to have a certain store of energy, and it's different for different people. So for me, it might be A, for you, it might be B. And it's very hard to outrun this set point that our body has set for us. If we eat too little, our body wants to eat a little bit more. So it's not a weak mind, and it's definitely genetic. But there are certain things we can do about it. Okay, so I think number one, you're right, lifestyle. Sometimes diet is, you can control a little bit in terms of what we choose. Healthy foods, you can have the same amount of food, but choose the healthy alternatives. So that's good. Then, of course, exercise. Exercise is something purely discretionary. There's nothing stopping you from exercising more. But being the busy people that we are, sometimes it's a bit difficult to quit our jobs, join a reality show, and lose 40% of body weight. I mean, it's just not possible for most of us. And therefore, there's a limit. So a lot of people, a lot of scientists say that maybe about 5% is doable. 10% is difficult, but still okay. On top of 10%, then people are starting to talk about maybe getting medical assistance through very effective medications in terms of either, now all the rage being injection pens, oral medications, other forms of medical assistance. And typically speaking, last time, on top of 20% weight loss, you're talking about surgical territory. But with advancements in medical technology, a lot of times, even above 20% now, it's proven that a lot of these medical interventions can help. So in that sense, you are able to change your body shape through lifestyle, but probably not a lot. Yeah.
There's one point that actually Dr. Tan, you talk about, everybody is different. Genetically wise, every body type is a bit different. So there's also this tension, like body positivity that encourage us to love ourselves as we are. But many people are still looking to make changes to their appearance. Then some even feeling guilty, like wanting a similar body type, to their partner or to their colleagues. And they are not being positive enough about their body. So where do you think people find a balance between positivity and me wanting to look good?
Okay, so I think that I'm not a psychiatrist, right? But I've seen enough people who are overweight and who have this positivity body issues to be able to comment at least a little bit more than the layman. So I think that most psychiatrists would say that between wanting something and being obsessed about something is a scale. It's not something like at a certain point it becomes abnormal, at a certain point it's okay. As with anything in life, how tall you are, how tall or short, it's really relative to how you feel and what society thinks is normal. So in terms of positivity versus wanting to change and then having it go to what we call being abnormal, it's really set by society, yourself, and there's no fixed point. But I think most people will say that if you want something and you are doing things to get where you want to go. So for example, I want to lose a bit of tummy. I have a weight loss target of maybe about 10%. I think that's healthy. But when it comes to realms of I'm thinking about it every time I sleep, I wake up, every time I sit down, I want to make sure that my tummy is not tucking out, and every time I look at people and I think, hey, maybe she's looking at me very funny and that becomes a little bit abnormal, right? It becomes a bit normal because I think that then maybe you might want to have some help, to see a psychiatrist and stuff. But it's never, it's never bad to want to have a goal in your life and want to work towards that goal as long as it's not excessive and abnormal. I think most of us will know. And if that's the case, then as you said, lifestyle changes are number one because they don't involve anything which is truly, absolutely radical. And the chance that something goes wrong, you might sprain your foot, but pretty low. But if you can't achieve that, as you said, 5% is attainable by most people. 10% is a big stretch. On top of 10%, I think realistically speaking, most of us will have a problem. Then that's where we might want to seek help. and a lot of doctors can help now with modern technology, whether we said earlier on, whether it's with weight, body contour, etc. But try not to go all the way to the extreme. If you are thinking about it all the time, when you eat, when you sleep, when you go to the toilet, when you're digging your nose, and still thinking about it, I think that's a little bit too much. Then maybe you should get certain other help.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tan. That's actually quite insightful. It's more about appreciating yourself while you are still making all these choices for yourself. So everyone, if this episode made you feel a bit less stuck with your body type and a bit clearer about when treatments might actually help and make sense, do follow, like, share and subscribe this podcast and share this with someone who always say, nothing I do will change my body. Okay? I should really do something to change my body as well. All right, this has been Spilling the Tea with Halley, and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye. See you in the next episode.
So let's talk back about lifestyle intervention. So we said about exercise and diet. So your weight is very simple. There are a lot of people come and say, oh, I can't seem to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. Actually, that's not true. So we all have our own set point in terms of metabolism. Okay, so our metabolism, let's say I burn X calories an hour. You might burn X minus 10 calories an hour. Someone else X plus 10. But that's pretty consistent. Yeah, so it's pretty consistent. So it's what you eat versus what you use. So let's say if your metabolism is X, right? And you would say that what you use will be X, and you exercise Y, and then that's the amount of energy that you use, and then what you consume would be, let's say, X plus Y. And if they both balance out, then you keep weight neutral. And if you eat a little bit more, exercise a bit less, then you lose weight or gain weight.